Welcome to this peaceful moment. Here, you will discover stories inspired by the quiet beauty of Japan. Each tale is like a soft breeze through a bamboo grove, carrying you away from the worries of the day. Imagine the scent of blooming cherry blossoms and the gentle flow of a nearby clear stream. Let these words and sounds cradle your mind in calm and serenity. Tonight, permit yourself to drift into a restful sleep. Let us begin this journey together. The lantern's soft glow. Prologue: the light within the darkness. In the quiet heart of a forgotten village, where moss crept along stone steps and the wind sang through bamboo groves, lanterns were lit each night. Their glow was not fierce like fire, nor blinding like the sun. It was soft, fragile, and enduring. The villagers believed that lanterns were more than mere light. They were guardians, guiding spirits across the threshold of night, illuminating paths for the living and the departed alike. At the center of this tradition stood one particular lantern, older than memory itself. It rested beside the river bridge, its frame carved of cedar, its paper shade worn with time. Each night it flickered, neither bright nor dim, but steady like a heartbeat. It was beneath this lantern that a young woman named Hannah often found herself standing, watching the way its light touched the darkness. She did not know why she came, only that in its presence she felt less alone. Her story began on a night when the wind carried whispers of the past, and the lantern's glow revealed more than shadows. Chapter 1: The Lantern by the River. Hannah was 22 when she lost her mother. The grief did not come in a flood, but in small, unrelenting waves. The sound of her mother's voice in the morning, now gone. The taste of soup cooked too plainly without her guidance. The silence of the house that seemed to press against her ears. Her father worked the fields and rarely spoke of loss. Hannah, unable to bear the emptiness within their home, wandered the village after dusk. The river was her refuge. Its current was slow, glimmering with moonlight. And at its edge stood the lantern. Each night, it burned with that same steady light. Hannah would sit on the stone steps nearby, watching the flame sway within its paper walls. She began to whisper her thoughts to it, as though the lantern could hear. "I miss her," she said once, her voice trembling. "The world feels too wide without her." The lantern flickered. Whether it was the wind or something else, Hannah could not tell. But she felt the warmth of its glow upon her hands, and for a brief moment, the ache in her chest softened. Chapter 2: Echoes of the Past. The village held its lantern festival in midsummer. Paper lanterns of every size floated upon the river, carrying prayers for ancestors and wishes for the living. The stream became a ribbon of light, winding through the valley until it disappeared into the night. Hannah joined the festival that year, though her heart remained heavy. She folded a lantern with care, wrote her mother's name upon it, and set it gently on the water. The lantern drifted, its glow mingling with countless others. Hannah followed it with her eyes until she could no longer tell which was hers. And then just for an instant she thought she saw her mother's face reflected on the water's surface, smiling faintly. Her breath caught. The river rippled, and the vision was gone. Was it imagination? Or had the lantern truly carried her voice across the veil of worlds? That night, Hannah returned to the lantern by the bridge. She pressed her palms together and bowed her head, whispering, "If you are here, if you can hear me, guide me, even if it's only a little." The lantern glowed steadily, as if in answer. Chapter 3: The Stranger's Story. One evening, as autumn winds carried the scent of fallen leaves, Hannah was not alone by the lantern. A traveler sat on the steps, his cloak ragged, his face lined with both age and sorrow. He nodded when Hannah approached. "You come here often, don't you?" "Yes," she replied softly. "Do you?" "Only tonight," he said. "But I've seen many lanterns like this, in villages far and near. They all hold the same truth." "What truth?" Hannah asked. "That light is not only for the dead," he said. "It's for the living, too. To remind us that we are not walking through the dark alone." The traveler looked into the lantern's glow, his voice quieter. "My son, he passed years ago. And yet, when I see these lanterns, I feel as though he walks beside me still." Hannah's chest tightened. She bowed her head in silence, understanding more in that moment than words could express. When she looked up, the traveler was gone. Only the lantern remained, steady in its glow. Chapter 4: The Burden of Silence. Winter came, blanketing the village in snow. The lantern by the bridge continued to burn, though its paper was patched and its frame grew brittle. Hannah feared each storm would snuff it out, but always the flame endured. Her father, however, weakened. The cold worsened his cough, and though he insisted he was fine, Hannah saw the weight he carried. One night, she confessed her fear to the lantern. "If he goes too, I don't think I can bear it." The lantern wavered, its light trembling against the snow. Hannah reached out, her fingers brushing the paper frame. It was warm beneath her touch. For the first time, she wondered, was it truly only fire inside, or something more, something alive? In that moment, she felt the presence of her mother beside her, not as an image, but as warmth, like arms wrapping around her shoulders. Her eyes filled with tears. Perhaps the lantern did not bring back the dead. But it allowed the living to remember, and in remembering, to endure. Chapter 5: The Lantern's Secret. Spring returned, and with it, renewal. The snow melted, and flowers bloomed along the riverbank. Hannah, tending to her father's recovery, nearly forgot the lantern until one evening, she saw a child crouched by it, staring into its glow. "What do you see?" Hannah asked gently. The boy smiled shyly. "My grandmother. She used to tell me stories before bed. I think she's smiling at me now." Hannah's heart stirred. She had thought the lantern's visions belonged to her alone. But perhaps anyone who carried longing could glimpse what they sought. She realized then the lantern was not only hers. It was the village's heart, a vessel of memory, a flame that wove the living and the lost together. And yet, like all things, it would one day fade. Unless Hannah resolved to become its keeper. Chapter 6, Becoming the Keeper of Light. She mended the lantern's paper when it tore, replaced its frame when it cracked, and lit its flame each dusk. Villagers began to notice, offering thanks, and soon entrusted her with their stories, prayers for their parents. Names of children lost, voices they longed to remember. Hannah listened. She carried their words to the lantern, whispering them as she lit the flame. And each night, the lantern glowed not only with fire, but with something greater, the weight of countless memories, the warmth of love carried across time. One evening, as Hannah tended to the lantern, she felt her mother's voice as clearly as if it were spoken aloud. "I am proud of you." Her tears fell, not from grief, but from gratitude. Epilogue: The glow that endures. Years passed. Hannah grew older, her hair touched by silver, her steps slower. But each night, she continued to light the lantern. Children came to watch, their eyes wide, their hearts carried by hope. Travelers paused to bow, whispering their own names to the flame. The lantern never failed. Its glow, soft and unwavering, became a beacon for all who passed through the village. And when Hannah herself was gone, the villagers carried her name to the lantern, whispering it as they lit the flame. The glow shone on, gentle as always. A bridge between night and dawn, between grief and memory, between the living and the lost. For the lantern's soft glow was more than light. It was love enduring, shining quietly against the dark, guiding every soul who stood in its presence. Shadows between the maples. Prologue: The whisper beneath the leaves. The village of Sukihara lay nestled in the quiet valley, where the mountains formed a cradle around rice fields that shimmered like silver in the spring. Just beyond the last row of houses, a grove of maples grew, their trunks tall and graceful, their branches arching together to form a canopy that blushed crimson each autumn. To the villagers, the grove was beautiful, but it was also a place of distance. They rarely entered after dark, for there was a saying passed down through generations: "Do not wander where the maples grow too thick, for there, the shadows remember." Kaoru, the daughter of a humble potter, had heard this warning since childhood. Yet for her, the maple grove was not a place of fear but of solace. She would walk there alone, listening to the rustle of leaves that seemed to whisper secrets, secrets she longed to understand. And one autumn evening, as twilight settled and the lanterns in the village flickered awake, Kaoru stepped into the grove and discovered that the warning was more than an old tale. The shadows truly did remember. Chapter 1: The Path into Dusk. The air was sharp with the first chill of autumn, and Kaoru's footsteps crunched against the fallen leaves as she walked the familiar path. A lantern swung lightly from her hand, its glow a trembling sphere of gold. She had come for the quiet, the stillness, the way the world seemed to hush in the grove. But as the lantern light shifted between the trunks, she noticed something unusual. The shadows did not fall as they should. Instead, they gathered, clung to the roots, and stretched longer than the trees themselves. Kaoru paused. "Strange," she whispered. And then she heard it. A murmur, faint as the rustle of silk. She turned sharply, her lantern raised, but there was only the stillness of the grove. She pressed forward, heart quickening. At the grove's center stood an ancient maple, its trunk broad enough that 3 people could not encircle it with their arms. Carvings scarred its bark, spirals and lines etched by hands long gone. She had seen it before, but tonight it seemed alive, the carvings pulsing faintly in the shifting light. From between the roots, a shape began to form. It was not flesh, not spirit, but a figure woven of darkness and memory. Kaoru's breath caught. The figure's face flickered with familiarity. Her brother, Haru, who had died 2 years before in a sudden illness. "Kaoru," the figure whispered, the voice trembling with both warmth and sorrow. Her lantern nearly slipped from her hands. "Haru? Is it truly you?" The shadow smiled faintly. "I am what remains." Chapter 2: The Memory Keepers. The grove trembled as if it listened. More shadows gathered, their forms wavering like smoke. A woman in an ancient kimono, her sleeves long as waves. A child laughing soundlessly, chasing leaves that fell through her fingers. An old man leaning on a staff. They circled Kaoru, their eyes or what felt like eyes fixed upon her. "We are the Memory Keepers," they said, voices layered, rising together like wind in branches. "We are those the world has forgotten. We remain in the roots, in the stones, in the shadows between the maples." Kaoru's heart pounded. "Why do you appear to me?" "Because you listen," they answered. "You carry remembrance. The living close their ears, but you left your grief open, and so we entered." Kaoru looked to Haru's shade, her eyes burning. "Then are you truly my brother? Or only my memory of him?" The shadow tilted its head. "Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. We are shaped by memory, but we breathe in the sorrow of the living. You gave me form, Kaoru." Tears fell freely now, dripping onto the roots. She reached for Haru, but her hand passed through him, scattering his shape like mist. "Do not seek touch," the shadows whispered. "Seek remembrance. For as long as you carry us, we live." Chapter 3: The Burden of Whispers. From that night onward, Kaoru was never the same. She returned to the grove often, and each time the shadows gathered. They told her fragments of lives lost, soldiers who never came home, mothers who died in childbirth, children whose names no one spoke anymore. She became their vessel, their listener. At night she lay awake, hearing their voices in her dreams. At times it felt unbearable, as though she were drowning in the grief of centuries. Yet she could not turn away. One evening, the Memory Keepers spoke to her again through the ancient maple. "You must choose," they said. "To carry us is to walk between worlds. You will know sorrow deeper than most. The village will not understand you. But if you turn away, we will fade, forgotten." Kaoru's hands trembled around her lantern. She thought of her brother, of his smile that still appeared in the shifting shadows. She could not lose him again. "I will carry you," she whispered. And so the grove breathed her in. Shadows sank into her chest, filling her with whispers and fragments of countless lives. She became the memory keeper's vessel. Chapter 4: The Keeper's Path. Years passed. Kaoru aged, but she carried the same quiet fire in her eyes. The villagers called her strange, whispering that she spoke to trees and shadows. Children avoided her, and elders shook their heads. But when one lost a loved one and grief became too heavy, they sought her in secret. And Kaoru would listen. She would walk with them to the grove, light her lantern, and let the shadows speak through her. Sometimes a familiar laugh echoed, sometimes a forgotten lullaby. The grieving wept, and for a moment, healing came. Kaoru knew the price each story she carried weighed upon her soul. Yet she bore it willingly, for in her heart, her brother's smile never faded. On her final night, when her hair had silvered and her body had grown frail, she returned alone to the maple grove. The lantern burned low in her trembling hand. She placed it at the ancient tree's roots and whispered, "I have carried you. Now carry me." The grove answered with a sigh of wind, and shadows enfolded her gently. Her lantern flickered once, then went out. The next morning, the villagers found the lantern, but not Kaoru. The maple grove stood silent, crimson leaves drifting in the dawn. Yet those who walked too close swore they heard her voice, soft as wind. "I am the remembered. I am the forgotten. I am the shadow between the maples." Epilogue: the lantern among the roots. Years later, children of the village spoke new tales of the maple grove. They said a woman with a lantern sometimes appeared when the night grew quiet, guiding those who mourned. She never frightened them, only listened, and in her presence, grief seemed lighter. And beneath the great maple, half buried in earth and roots, lay a single, weathered lantern, its glow never entirely gone. The Fox's Evening Journey. Prologue: beneath the autumn moon. The rice fields lay bare under the harvest moon, their stubble gleaming pale silver. A chill had begun to creep into the night air, carrying with it the fragrance of fallen persimmons and damp earth. Somewhere a night heron cried, its lonely call carried across the paddies. On the narrow path between the fields, a fox walked. His coat was a red deepened by age, streaked with ash, as though autumn itself had brushed him into being. His tail swayed like a brush dipped in twilight, painting the air behind him. His name, whispered in rustling reeds and murmuring streams, was Koma. Neither Holy Spirit nor Holy Beast, he belonged to the hour when the light of day and the silence of night touched. The moon hung large above the distant mountains. Beyond them, faint lanterns glowed from the village of Shiranui. Tonight, something called him there, not for the first time, but with an urgency older than memory. Koma paused at the ridge, ears lifted, listening. The cry of an owl, the rush of unseen water, the faint echo of a bell. all layered into a silence that pressed upon him. He stepped forward. The evening journey had begun. Chapter 1: The Bridge of Lanterns. The river flowed broad and dark, carrying the moon's reflection along its ripples. A wooden bridge arched across it, slender but graceful, its railings strung with paper lanterns painted with chrysanthemums, cranes, and maple leaves. Their glow shimmered on the water as if a path of fireflies stretched to the other shore. Koma paused at the bridge. Though his pause made no sound, the lantern flames bent slightly toward him, as though recognizing a presence long expected. Beyond the bridge lay Shiranui, its houses small and humble, their thatched roofs silvered with dew. The villagers had gathered in the square before the shrine gate. They stood in solemn stillness, their shadows flickering in the fire of a great bonfire. An old priestess, robes white as frost, lifted branches of sakari and spoke, her voice cracked but steady. "Tonight, at the turning of the season, we light the way. Spirits of our ancestors, may you find the bridge. Fox of the dusk, may you carry our prayers." The crowd bowed deeply, their faces aglow with both reverence and unease. At the square's edge, unseen among the shadows, Koma stood. His gaze fixed on the flames, the words settling over him like falling leaves. Though no one turned their eyes toward him, he felt the weight of their hopes, fragile but enduring. Chapter 2: The Forgotten Shrine. Beyond the village, the forest grew dense. Cedars rose tall, their trunks lined like silent monks. At their feet stood stone jizo, faces worn smooth, each draped in a faded red vid. Offerings of flowers, long wilted, lay at their feet. Deeper still, a torii appeared, its beams leaning, its vermilion paint peeled by rain. Beyond it stretched steps cracked with moss, leading to a shrine long abandoned. Koma padded up the path. Stone lanterns stood crooked, empty of flame, their tops heavy with lichen. The shrine's roof sagged, its doors veiled in vines. Yet a camellia bloomed beside the altar, white petals glistening in the moonlight, defying the season. The fox placed his paw upon the threshold. The wood was cold, but beneath it pulsed a faint memory of devotion, like incense lingering long after prayer. From a distance came the sound of a bell. Low, mournful, rolling across the mountains. The shrine was not forgotten, it was waiting. Chapter 3: The Child with the Lantern. The crunch of small footsteps broke the silence. From the trees came a girl, her lantern shaped like a chrysanthemum, glowing softly. She wore a faded indigo kimono, sleeves brushing against the weeds. Her eyes found Koma. She did not flinch. Children, unlike adults, often saw him as he was. "You're the fox from the stories," she whispered. Her voice wavered between fear and wonder. "The one who walks at dusk." Koma tilted his head. The girl stepped closer, bowing slightly as though remembering her grandmother's teachings. She placed her lantern on the stone before the shrine. "My grandmother said the fox guides the spirits at harvest moon. Is that why you're here?" The fox did not answer, but his silence carried meaning. The shrine's doors trembled with shadow. Shapes like waiting figures stirred in the dark. The girl clutched her sleeves but did not run. Instead, she whispered, "Then will you let me walk with you?" Koma turned toward the mountain path. She followed, lantern trembling in her hands. Chapter 4: The Mountain Path. The path wound steeply upward, lined with maples whose last leaves clung like embers. The girl's lantern cast shifting circles of light upon stones slick with moss. The air grew thick with an unseen presence. Then, slowly, the forest stirred. Figures emerged from the mist, villagers of ages past. Men with straw hats, women balancing baskets, children holding toys. Their faces were calm, their outlines pale, as if carved from memory. They walked in silence, yet their procession carried dignity, like a festival that no longer belonged to the living. The girl gasped softly. She clutched her lantern tighter, her eyes searching the faces. Among them, she saw a boy her age carrying a small drum. He glanced at her, smiled faintly, then dissolved back into mist. Her chest ached with longing. She wanted to call out, but knew instinctively that silence was the only gift she could give. The procession thickened as they climbed. From hollows, from streams, from the foot of ancient pines, more spirits joined, all moving with Koma at their head. His tail swayed like a brush guiding ink across paper. Above, the stars stretched like a river of light. The bell sounded again, each strike pulling the spirits closer to their destination. Chapter 5: The Evening Bell. At the ridge, the forest opened to reveal a small bell tower. Its beams leaned, its roof sagged, yet the bell hung intact, its bronze surface etched with worn characters. Koma padded forward and pressed his paws against the wooden beam. He struck the bell. The sound rolled deep, filling the mountains, the river, the village. It vibrated not only through the air but through memory itself. The girl felt it in her chest. Images rose before her hands pressing rice cakes, children playing by lantern light, families bowing before shrines. The bell was not just a sound, it was remembrance, stitching the living and the dead together. Again, the fox struck the bell. Its resonance deepened. The girl's lantern flared, bright enough to outshine the stars for a heartbeat. The spirits lifted their faces. Their forms shimmered, lightening, ready to cross. The girl knelt, whispering, "Please find your way home." Koma's gaze met hers. In that moment, she understood he was not simply fox, nor god, nor ghost, but the harmony between all three. With the final strike of the bell, the path was opened. Chapter 6: Crossing the Bridge. The procession descended. Lanterns along the bridge swayed, their flames bending as though bowing in greeting. One by one, the spirits stepped onto the bridge. As they crossed, their forms dissolved into sparks of light, drifting upward to join the river of stars. The girl's cheeks were wet with tears she did not understand. Grief and peace mingled like two streams meeting. At last, only Koma remained. He paused at the bridge's center, tail flicking once like a final brushstroke. His dark eyes met the girl's. She bowed deeply, hands pressed together. "Thank you." The fox stepped into the lantern light and vanished, his form scattering like fireflies into the night. Epilogue Dawn. The mist lifted with the morning sun. Villagers rose to find the bonfire gone cold, but peace lingered in the air. Many spoke of dreams of loved ones smiling, crossing a bridge of light. The girl returned home, her lantern now empty. Her grandmother touched her hair gently, eyes shining with unspoken understanding. And though the fox was never seen again by day, some swore that at dusk, when wind stirred the cedars and the river glimmered with moonlight, they glimpsed a red tail slip into the reeds. Others heard the faint echo of a bell rolling through the mountains. A sound both sorrowful and comforting, like the heartbeat of the season itself. Thus, the evening journey continued. Not only for Koma, nor only for Shiranui, but for all who walked between worlds, in harmony with the turning of time. Twilight on the temple roof. Prologue. The fading light. Evening spread over the valley temple. The air was cool, the bell's deep toll drifted across rooftops, and the horizon glowed violet and amber. On the roof sat Riku, a boy of 15. He came here often, drawn to twilight's stillness. The courtyard below bustled with chores, but up here, the world felt suspended. As he looked across the mountains painted in ink, he whispered what waits beyond twilight. No answer came, yet something in the roof seemed to stir, as though listening. Chapter 1. The Fox of Twilight. Riku had always loved the roof. As a child, he had climbed it during a festival, gazing down at lanterns like fallen stars. The memory stayed with him, even when Master Genmyo, the head priest, warned, "The roof is sacred, not a playground." One evening, Riku noticed a glimmer at the ridge. It grew into the shape of a fox, small and glowing like embers. Its golden eyes met his. "You live here?" he whispered. The fox said nothing, but Riku felt words inside. "I dwell where twilight lingers." From then on, twilight was never the same. Chapter 2. Voices in the Tiles. Sometimes the fox appeared, sometimes not. But each evening, the roof felt more alive. One night, the fox stopped at a dragon tile, cracked with age. Riku leaned closer. Faint whispers rose, like wind through bamboo. "Guardian I remain, though forgotten. I keep watch still." Riku pressed his palm to the stone. It was warm, as if centuries of sunlight slept within. He realized the temple roof held memory, voice, and spirit. Twilight was a threshold not only for him, but for the temple itself. Chapter 3. Lantern Festival. Autumn came with the Festival of Lanterns. Villagers filled the temple, releasing paper lanterns into the river. That night, Riku climbed the roof with a lantern of his own. The fox was waiting. When it touched the lantern, the flame rose. transforming into a ribbon of light carrying faint shapes, faces of the departed. "You guide them," Riku whispered. Tears warmed his cheeks. Twilight, he understood, was a passage for the living and the dead. Chapter 4: The Secret Garden. Winter deepened. Snow weighted the eaves, but Riku still climbed. One evening, the fox led him behind the great beam, revealing a hidden garden, moss, ferns, and a plum tree blooming out of season. Its blossoms scattered like snow, dissolving into warmth on his palm. The roof was not only a memory, but life hidden in silence. Riku realized he, too, carried unseen roots, waiting to grow. Chapter 5: The Storm. One spring night, thunder shook the mountains. Rain lashed the tiles, the dragon tile groaned. Riku climbed into the storm. The fox appeared, glowing fiercely. Together they pressed against the corner tile. Lightning split the sky. For an instant, boy, fox, and dragon became one blaze of light. When dawn came, the temple still stood. The monks praised the gods, but Riku knew the truth: the roof endured through bonds unseen. Chapter 6: The Priest's Council. Afterward, Master Genmyo spoke to Riku. "You see what others cannot," he said gently. Riku confessed about the voices, the fox. The priest nodded. "The temple is alive. To hear it is a gift, but not for yourself alone. Carry it with compassion, for all who come here." For the first time, Riku felt not scolded, but entrusted. Chapter 7: Long Twilight. Years passed. Riku grew taller, calmer. The fox still appeared, though less often, as if urging him forward. One summer dusk, they stood together on the ridge. "Will you always remain?" Riku asked. The fox's form grew radiant, dissolving into countless lights, guardians, ancestors, forgotten prayers. Its voice filled twilight itself. "As long as twilight returns, I remain." It leapt skyward and vanished into the fading sun. Epilogue. Beneath the roof of time. Now grown, Riku tends the temple. He sweeps the courtyard, guides prayers, and still gazes at the roof at day's end. Sometimes, children climbing secretly glimpse a shimmer on the tiles, a flash of fur, golden eyes against the dusk. The roof endures. Twilight returns, always between light and dark, always alive. In it, harmony lingers. The mist over the rice paddies. Prologue. Dawn in the valley. The first light of dawn brushed over the valley. Mist clung to the rice paddies like silver gauze, drifting between furrows and reflecting the pale pink of the morning sky. The mountains beyond were shrouded in haze, standing as silent guardians of the land. At the edge of the paddies, a boy named Haruto paused, holding a small wicker basket. He had risen before anyone else, drawn by the stillness of the fields at daybreak. The air was damp, the soil cold, yet he felt no discomfort. Instead, the mist called to him. He had always been fascinated by it. The mist seemed neither water nor cloud, but a threshold between the earth and the unseen. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, it caressed his cheeks like the breath of unseen spirits. "Someday," he whispered, "I want to see what is hidden inside the mist." No reply came, only the distant sound of water flowing along the irrigation channels. Still, the boy felt certain that the valley was listening. Chapter 1: The Village Elder. In the village, life had already begun. Smoke rose from thatched roofs, and the soft clatter of wooden sandals echoed along the narrow streets. Haruto's grandfather, Saburo, was already in the fields, checking young seedlings. The old man's movements were slow but precise, honed by decades of care for the land. "You came early again," Saburo said, noticing Haruto's approach. His eyes crinkled in a smile beneath the broad straw hat. "I wanted to see the mist," Haruto said. Saburo chuckled. "The mist is more than water and air, boy. It carries memory. Ancestors linger in it, blessing the paddies. Few notice, but if you are quiet and patient, you may hear them." Haruto's eyes widened. "The ancestors speak to us?" "Not with words, as you and I speak," the old man said. "But with presence. They move in the patterns of the fields, in the shifting fog, in the wind across the mountains. Watch, listen, and you may feel them." That night, Haruto lay awake, thinking of the mist. It seemed alive, holding secrets he longed to understand. He resolved to rise even earlier the next day to meet the ancestors in their vale. Chapter 2: The Breath of the Fields. Before dawn, Haruto quietly left his house. The mist had thickened, cloaking the paddies in a soft white sea. The reflections of the sky shimmered on the water's surface, blending earth and heaven. He walked carefully along the narrow ridges separating the paddies, sandals sinking slightly into the wet soil. The world was hushed, except for the faint trickle of irrigation channels and the distant call of a heron. As he paused, closing his eyes, the mist seemed to thicken around him, becoming almost tangible. Then, faintly, he heard murmurs soft, overlapping, like voices carried on the wind. "Do not fear," the voices seemed to say. "We are with you." Opening his eyes, Haruto glimpsed figures bending over the water. They planted and harvested, carried bundles, bowed toward the soil. Faces were indistinct, blurred by the fog, but their movements were gentle, familiar, comforting. Haruto's breath caught. He thought of his grandfather, who had passed away the previous year, tending these very fields each dawn. Kneeling, he placed his hand on the water's mirror. "Grandfather, is it you?" The mist stirred as if in answer, enveloping him in warmth. Though the figures faded as the sun began to rise, Haruto felt their presence linger, settled deep within his heart. Chapter 3: Seasons of the Mist. Days passed, then weeks. Summer descended fully upon the valley. The sun grew hot, cicadas called ceaselessly, and the rice paddies stretched emerald beneath the sky. Haruto continued his quiet pilgrimages to the mist, sometimes alone, sometimes with the old Saburo, who shared stories of ancestors long gone. "The mist is patient," Saburo said one evening, seated on the veranda. "It waits for those who remember, those who care for the land." Haruto learned to move with the rhythms of the paddy's planting. Weeding, irrigating, always attentive to the subtle changes in the mist, the flow of water, the tilt of the sun. Sometimes he thought he saw tiny lights dancing in the fog at daybreak, spirits moving between furrows. Autumn approached. The leaves of the surrounding forests turned red and gold. Harvest was near. The villagers worked tirelessly, and Haruto felt an increasing sense of responsibility not only to the land but to the spirits that lingered among it. Chapter 4 Festival of Ancestors. The village held its annual Bon Festival, a time to honor those who had passed. Lanterns floated along the river, carrying prayers upstream, while the villagers gathered at the shrine. Haruto helped light the lanterns but remained drawn to the misted paddies. At dawn the next morning, he returned to the fields. The fog was thick, almost solid, and through it, he glimpsed the figures again, ancestors bending over water, guiding seedlings, blessing the earth. Haruto knelt at the edge of a flooded paddy. "Please watch over the harvest," he whispered. The mist swirled, brushing his face, gentle as a caress. The reflection of ancestors shimmered in the water, ephemeral but vivid. The boy realized that the mist was not only a veil between worlds but a bridge, connecting him to those who had tended the land before him, and those who would tend it after. Chapter 5 The Storm. One late spring night, storm clouds gathered over the valley. Thunder rolled across the mountains, and sheets of rain lashed the fields. The paddies filled, water spilling over their edges, and the wind howled like a living thing. Haruto could not sleep. He felt the call of the fields, a whisper in the mist. He rose, taking lantern and hoe, and ran along the ridges to steady the dikes. Amid the rain, he saw the faint glow of the ancestors, their figures moving purposefully, guiding him, strengthening him. With every step, he felt the centuries of care and labor in the valley beneath him. By dawn, the storm had passed. The paddies were damaged but not destroyed. The villagers praised the gods, but Haruto knew the truth, the persistence of the land. The mist, and its guardians had endured through care and attention, not luck alone. Chapter 6 Lessons of the Mist. Haruto's bond with the mist deepened over the years. He learned patience, observation, and humility. Every movement in the paddies, every subtle change in water and soil, became a language. The mist taught him that life was both fragile and enduring, that the unseen was as real as the visible, and that respect for the past sustained the present. Old Saburo passed quietly one summer morning, and Haruto tended the fields alone, but never truly alone. The mist carried the old man's presence, and he often saw the faintest forms of ancestors moving among the paddies, guiding him still. He became a guardian of the land, a bridge between the villagers, the fields, and the unseen. Chapter 7 Twilight among the fields. Years passed. Haruto grew tall and strong, and his hands were familiar with the soil, water, and rice seedlings. Children of the village sometimes followed him to the paddies, curious about the mist. He taught them silently, showing them how to walk along the ridges, how to feel the life in the water and soil. And sometimes, at the first light, the mist would rise thicker than ever, revealing glimpses of ancestors, guiding them, blessing the fields. Haruto often paused, kneeling at the water's edge, remembering the first day he felt the presence of the unseen. And as he gazed at the valley, the mountains, and the mist rolling like silver across the paddies, he felt an unbroken continuity, a harmony connecting past, present, and future. Epilogue: the mist endures. Long after Haruto grew old, he continued to rise with the dawn. The village thrived. Rice paddies shimmered under the morning sun, the mountains watched silently, and the mist returned faithfully each day. Villagers whispered of the boy who spoke to the mist, the man who understood the ancestors. But Haruto knew it was not he alone. It was the land, the water, the fog, and the generations who had tended it. And when the valley slept under the silver veil of mist, the harmony of all those who had lived and worked and loved here lingered. Breath by breath, season by season, the mist over the rice paddies carried memory. Blessing, and quiet grace, a reminder that life, like the fields, was endless, enduring, and alive. Crickets singing in the bamboo. Prologue: the voice of night. The valley lay hushed beneath a harvest moon. Bamboo stalks swayed gently in the cool air, their leaves whispering like 1,000 paper fans. From deep within the grove rose the endless chorus of crickets. Their voices, trembling yet unbroken, carried across the paddies and the narrow dirt paths of the village. To most, it was simply autumn's lullaby, the background of the season. To Kenta, a boy of 12 summers, it was something else, mysterious, ungraspable, yet alive. Every evening, after supper, he crept from the wooden house where he lived with his grandmother, slipping barefoot along the mossy stones. He would sit at the base of the tallest bamboo, knees pulled tight to his chest, listening. The sound was thin but infinite, woven with the night air. Sometimes he imagined words hidden inside it. Sometimes he felt as though unseen eyes watched him through the mist. "Why does it feel like they are speaking to me?" he whispered one night. The bamboo only sighed in the breeze. But Kenta sensed that if he kept listening, if he gave enough of his heart, the song would one day answer. He did not know then that this nightly chorus would become his path, a path leading him toward harmony, memory, and the unseen bonds of all living things. Chapter 1: The Grove and the Old Poet. Kenta's grandmother was his only companion at home. She walked with a cane and spoke softly, tending a small patch of herbs and keeping the hearth alive. She told stories at night, of ancestors, of the mountain spirits, and of his grandfather, who had passed before Kenta was born. "Your grandfather loved the bamboo grove," she often said. "Each autumn, he would sit where you now sit, listening. He said the crickets carried the voices of the ancestors. One evening, when Kenta returned from the grove, an unfamiliar figure sat by the fire with his grandmother. He was an old man with clear, sharp eyes and a brush tucked into his sleeve. His name was Master Yoshinori, once a wandering poet, now retired to the valley. "I saw the boy sitting in the bamboo," Yoshinori said, sipping tea. "Good. That is a place of impermanence. The crickets sing briefly, yet in their song is the whole of autumn." Kenta frowned. "Impermanence?" The poet smiled. "Everything passes, young one. The moon fades at dawn. The bamboo bends with the wind. Even our lives flow away like rivers. But in passing, beauty shines more brightly. The crickets sing not despite their short lives, but because of them." That night, beneath his quilt, Kenta listened differently. The chirps were no longer just sounds. They were jewels of time, fragile, fleeting, yet eternal in memory. Chapter 2: Lanterns in the Mist. Autumn deepened. The villagers prepared for the Bon festival, when lanterns were set afloat on the river to guide spirits home. Kenta helped his grandmother fold paper lanterns, his hands clumsy but eager. "Will grandfather come back with the others?" he asked. She smiled gently. "The spirits walk where memory calls them. If you remember him, he will be near." That evening, as lanterns drifted downstream like stars upon water, Kenta wandered back to the bamboo grove. The crickets sang louder than ever, their chorus vibrating through his chest. In the mist, he thought he saw faint shapes, figures bent as if working, faces blurred, yet tender. "Grandfather?" he whispered. The crickets swelled. The bamboo trembled. A warmth spread through his chest, as though unseen hands had rested on his shoulders. He could not be sure, but in that moment, he felt accompanied, as if the song itself had become an embrace. Chapter 3: The Storm. One night, dark clouds gathered. Rain lashed the village, and wind roared through the bamboo, bending stalks almost to the ground. Water overflowed from the paddies, threatening to wash away the dikes. Villagers rushed out with buckets and tools. Kenta, clutching a lantern, joined them. The storm frightened him, yet he remembered the figures in the mist, the song that did not falter even as the wind howled. As he worked to shore up the dike, soaked and trembling, he thought he glimpsed faint silhouettes in the rain, shadowy ancestors bending beside the living, passing buckets, steadying the earth. When the storm passed, the fields were damaged but not lost. The villagers spoke of fortune, but Kenta knew something deeper. The harmony of past and present, seen and unseen, had held the valley together. Chapter 4: Lessons of the Poet. In the weeks after the storm, Master Yoshinori often invited Kenta to his small hut near the shrine. Scrolls lined the walls, and ink brushes lay scattered. "Why do you listen so intently to the crickets?" Yoshinori asked one evening. Kenta hesitated. "Because it feels like they're speaking. Like they know things I don't." The poet nodded. "They are teachers, then. But they speak without words." To hear them, you must empty yourself. If your heart is noisy, you will hear only chirps. But if it is still, you may hear eternity. He handed Kenta a blank scroll. Write what you hear. Kenta dipped a brush, clumsy with ink, and scrawled. The crickets sing not only of autumn nights, but of time itself. The poet read silently, then smiled. Good. The bamboo has already begun teaching you. Chapter 5 Winter's Silence. When frost came, the cricket songs faded. One by one, they ceased, until the bamboo grove stood in silence, only the wind stirring the dry leaves. Kenta felt lonely. Nights were empty without the chorus. Yet his grandmother told him, the silence is also part of the song. Without pause, there is no music. Without winter, no spring. Through the cold months, he remembered the voices, the faint shapes in the mist, the warmth that had touched him. He realized the crickets had not vanished, they had only gone deeper, returning to earth, waiting. He tended the hearth with his grandmother, studied inkbrush with Yoshinori, and learned to listen not only to sounds but to silence. Chapter 6 Return of the Song. When spring softened the air and summer ripened into green, Kenta returned often to the grove. By autumn, he was taller, stronger, and when the first evening chorus rose again, it was like hearing old friends return. This time, he did not only listen. He breathed with the rhythm, felt his heart slow, his mind quiet. In the shimmering layers of sound, he sensed both the living crickets and the memory of all who had listened before. Him, his grandfather, villagers long gone, perhaps even the poet in his youth. He realized the song was not merely insects chirping, but the valley itself speaking, its breath carried through countless generations. Epilogue Harmony in the bamboo. Years passed. Kenta grew into a man, then an elder himself. He married, raised children, and continued tending the fields and visiting the bamboo grove. Each autumn, he brought the younger ones to sit beneath the tall stalks, teaching them to close their eyes and listen. Some grew restless, but others felt what he had once felt, the tremble of unseen voices in the night air. When Master Yoshinori passed, villagers found among his scrolls a short poem written in a delicate hand. Crickets in the grove, their song is not theirs alone, but all of autumn. Kenta understood. The song belonged to everyone, the living, the dead, the earth, the air. And so, as the harvest moon rose and the bamboo swayed, the valley once again filled with the endless chorus of crickets. The sound carried harmony across generations, reminding all who listened that even fleeting voices could hold eternity.